Well, good morning, Lynn Haven. Good to see you today. Good morning, Norfolk, Strawbridge, online, wherever you're at. Thanks for being with us. This is week 5 as we are wrapping up today our sermon series, The Gratitude Economy. And a couple weeks ago, I had one goal for this series, and here was the goal I set out for myself. My goal, if you were here a few weeks ago, you heard me say my goal is that you would find this series so helpful, you'd share it. And I know at least 3 of you have, so I'm putting myself in the win category there. I did not say all of you, but that's my hope over the last few weeks, is that this has been genuinely helpful to you. And our theme verse for the whole series comes from the book of James. James, the brother of Jesus, said this: "Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." And I just want to give you a quick run through of where we've been the past couple of weeks. If you weren't here with us, you can grab any of this on YouTube or on the website, the app or whatever. But week 1, we did the dice gratitude game. And so you roll the die, and then depending on the number you get, you go ahead and answer that question as we're trying to get out of deception and into gratitude. Number 2, we had our week of wow. We had our week of wow, where we said, as some things happened in life, wow, what was the recent? People have been sending me these all over the place. It's been really fun. Somebody, I think they got in a car accident. Oh no, my daughter's windshield in the passenger side, it just fell all the way down. She's like, "Hey, my not windshield. What's the door? What's it called? Window." The window, the passenger window. You're like, the windshield fell down? That's horrible. The window fell down. It's just like down. And if you've been around, I'm not handy. So I'm like, what are we going to do about that? Anyway, we got it up and duct tape. And so that's fixed. But it's like, wow, you have a car. That's the idea. When your window falls down, wow, you have a car. Wow. So we can have more gratitude. Wow. We can say wow, because we want to be more grateful in life, right? Okay. And that was the week of wow. Third week, we talked about growing in gratitude requires growth in generosity. We talked about this pipe where Jesus called us to love God and love people. And the delta in the middle of the triangle, the delta is the transformation happens when we do both of these things, right? We can't do one or the other. We all like one or the other more, find one or the other more easy. Man, tough day today. So anyway, we talked about gratitude and generosity. Transformation happens at the intersection of gratitude and generosity. Gratitude and generosity, and that's where transformation happens. And we have to develop gratitude, and that's good, but then it requires generosity to actually experience change in your life. And then last week, we saw in week 4 how that builds gratitude in others, and that's the great miracle. That it builds gratitude in others. That when I'm generous, you say wow. When you're generous, I say wow, and God works through us. And we ended last week with the gratitude economy. We said the gratitude economy is being a decided giver. We talked about the fact that you have to be a decided giver. And that frees us from deception and develops generosity and generates gratitude in others. That this is the gratitude economy. That as I decide in advance to be a decided giver, to plan my giving, it frees me from the deception. We spent a lot of time talking about being deceived. I don't want you to be deceived. And develops generosity and generates gratitude in others. That's the gratitude economy. And I was talking with someone this week, and they're like, "Hey, that was a great wrap up to the series last week." And I said, "Oh, actually, there's one more week." And they didn't say this because they're a thoughtful person, but they said with their face, "Why? Why? Didn't you wrap it up last week? We thought it was a great conclusion." I'm like, well, I have one more week. And I want to introduce this final week of the series, because it is the final week of the series, by talking about an experience that is near and dear to my heart. And for some of you, it will be near and dear to your heart. And that is teaching someone to drive. Teaching someone to drive. If you have ever been a part of teaching someone to drive, a child, a niece, a nephew, or if you are near enough to remember learning to drive, someone taught you to drive, learning to drive, you know what I know, and that is that teaching someone to drive, and it looks like learning to drive, is an absolutely miserable experience for everyone. I hated every minute of it. It was awful. And thankfully, all of my kids now know how to drive. I never have to teach anyone to drive again. I'm so thankful for that. And here was the frustrating part for me. It's a little personal family therapy all together. When I was teaching my children to drive, I came up with one simple rule. I had one simple rule, one guideline, one request. I just want you to do one thing. I want you to do one thing. And here it is. And all the parents, you're gonna be like, yeah, it's so reasonable. Don't accelerate to a red light. That's it. I have one thing. Here's what I want you to do, like as I'm with my kids, right? And my daughter, Sarah Joy, she's the last one who learned how to drive. She did great. She did great with this. But the rest of my children, I'm like, I just want one thing. Just don't accelerate to a red light. When you don't accelerate to a red light, it tells me that you're aware of what's going on. It puts us in a position where you can brake if they brake. It's just like symbolic that you're paying along. And it was awful. It was awful. Now, when I told them to not accelerate to the red light, right, as I'm teaching them to drive, of course, there is a bigger principle that I hope for them. And the bigger principle is this: don't get in a wreck. That's my goal for them. Don't get in a wreck. And the reason that today this series has one more week is right here. The reason this series has one more week is, I could have sworn there was another slide. Anyway, okay, we're gonna go with this. Is that godliness with I'm gonna tell the production team thing real quick. We have lost my we've lost my preview screen. Just so in the back, I'm not seeing what I would normally see. So I'm gonna have to go flying blind a little bit. Don't get in a whoa, no, don't, just stay with me. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's back. Okay, great. Okay, sorry. Don't get in a wreck. Okay, so 1 Timothy, we're going to be in 1 Timothy. We're going to be in 1 Timothy. We're going to be in 1 Timothy 6. Here's what Timothy says. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. You're like, we already knew that. We saw that just a minute ago. So Timothy is written by the Apostle Paul, wrote this letter to Timothy, his protege. Timothy was a pastor in Ephesus. And towards the end of this first letter that Paul wrote to Timothy, he gives him some instructions about how they're to think about money. And he says, godliness with contentment is great gain. And then I want to remind us that the way we get to contentment through this series is what? We've been talking about gratitude. We've been talking about gratitude. That the way that we get to contentment is through gratitude. And then he goes on, verse 7, he says this: for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Now, this is building towards why we're doing a fifth week. He's letting you know, okay, contentment. Why should we be content? Because you can take nothing out of this world. That's very sobering if you think about it for just a little while. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Verse 9, he says this: those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. The reason we're doing week 5 of this series is that money can wreck your faith. Money can wreck your faith. And if you are a follower of Jesus here today, if you are a Christian, I don't want money to wreck your faith. If you're not a Christian, you're not sure about Jesus anymore, and you're not even sure about faith, that's great. This series can still help you. Generosity and gratitude is a better way to live as a human. But we're in week 5 because money can wreck your faith, and I don't want it to. I don't want it to wreck your faith. So we got to wrestle. What does he mean by those who want to get rich? Well, I have a couple thoughts for you about those who want to get rich that you can decide for yourself. I don't know what's in your heart. I do not pretend to know your heart. So I would ask you to consider, is more money a goal for life? When you have goals for life, when you're striving, when you think about what you want in the future, how much of a goal is that? How much is it a goal relative to the other goals? Is it the number one goal? Is more money the answer to your problems? If you think that more money is the answer to your problems, it could be that you want to get rich in a way that could shipwreck your faith. Is more money what will make you feel secure? Is more money your firm foundation and a little bit more is just what you need? I'm not saying that many of you don't have genuine financial need or financial challenges. I'm not saying that we shouldn't get control of our money. I'm not saying that we shouldn't save for the future. We talked about that. But how we think about money at like the macro level, at the highest level, is what will determine whether or not money wrecks our faith. And if money's my goal, I mean, more than like love and kindness and sacrificial generosity, if I have a higher goal to get more than the ability to give more, if it's the answer to your problems, it's actually your problem. Or you could say it like this. If you think that more is the road to contentment, you might want to be rich. And those who long to be rich plunge themselves into ruin and destruction. If you think that more is the road to contentment, I'll be content as soon as I have what? If you're waiting to be content to have, you may want to be rich. And if you want to be rich, it is deadly to your faith. Look at what he says next. Look at what Paul says next. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. As your pastor, I don't want you to wander from the faith. And I don't want you to pierce yourself with many griefs. Now hear me, I'm sincere when I say I have no idea whether or not you love money. I have no idea. Only you know that. But as Americans, it is the air we breathe, it is the water we swim in, to put our hope in money, to trust in money, to think that a little more is the secret to contentment. And Jesus comes to you today through the Apostle Paul and just wants to save your faith. Because you know, right? You know, you can wander from the faith and come to church every week, right? You know that. Guaranteed there are people sitting around you today who wandered from the faith years ago, but they're habitual church attenders. That's what we're trying to fight against here. We're trying to fight against as a church. We're not a church attendance. We want Jesus' presence and will to have deep access to your life, and it won't if you love money. Now, we were doing this in sermon review team on Monday, and this question was asked. How you handle your money can wreck your faith. Here's the next one. Go to the next one. Oh, okay, go to the next one. Sorry. Dang, I'm off my game today, y'all. But you're with me, okay. But you, man of God, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. This is the next verse. But you, man of God, flee from all this and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. So he says the love of money, those who want to get rich plunge themselves into ruin and destruction. They wander from the faith. They pierce themselves with many griefs. And then the next thing he says is, so flee from all this. What's the this? It's the love of money. So here's the question. Why can money shipwreck your faith? Why is it that money can shipwreck your faith? This is the question I was asked. Eric, why? Why is money such a big deal? I mean, aren't there like a lot of other things that could wreck my faith? Sure, there are. There are. But Paul spends like almost a whole chapter in 1 Timothy explaining that money can shipwreck your faith. Money can wreck your faith. And so he told Timothy, you man of God, flee the love of money and pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace. We'll put the list up. Here's why. Because loving money pulls you away from righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Loving money will pull you away from these virtues. That's why he said, flee the love of money and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance. Because if you're loving money, you're willing to sacrifice what you know is right. If you're loving money, you're willing to sacrifice God's plan and God's best. If you're loving money, your faith is in money rather than in Jesus. I hope that if I get this, then it will be okay, rather than I trust that God is with me. If you're loving money, you're loving something other than the someone you're invited to love. And here's the thing we have to remember about loving money. Here's the thing we have to know. This is not about how much you have. It's about how much you want. It's not about how much you have. It's about how much you want. It's about contentment. This is not an indictment of people who have a lot. We've covered this already. Some people have more than others, always has been, always will be. It's not their fault. It's probably not your fault. There are some people who, whether it's the family you grew up in, the industry they chose, their aptitudes, whatever, they just happen to be people who are really good at making money. And there are lots of godly, wonderful people doing wonderful work in the world who will never have a lot of money. This is not about how much you have. This is not about not liking people with wealth. It's not about how much you have. It's about how much you want. And you can have nothing and be consumed with money. And you can have more money than most of us could imagine and be completely free. And as your pastor, I want you to be free. So in a couple verses later, Paul tells us the road to freedom. In verse 17, we pick it up here. Command those who are rich in this present world. Command those who are rich in this present world. And I know that when I read this verse, the first thing I want to think is, good, I don't have to pay attention anymore. Not me. Don't actually raise your hand, okay? But if I were to say, raise your hand if you're rich, how many hands are going up? Not many. Not many. Right? No, I'm not gonna do it. So here's what we have to do. We have to get out of our American comparison game version of rich, and we have to put ourselves into the biblical world. And in the biblical world, here is how we should define rich. Rich is people who have a choice. Rich is people who have a choice. Okay, so you might be rich if you have a subscription to anything. If you have a subscription to anything, you're like, well, there's lots of subscriptions I want that I don't have. But I know there are. Me too. But I got a bunch. Do I need those Apple subscriptions? Do I need my Netflix subscription? Do I need my Amazon Prime? Probably. I mean, let's be honest. We're stuck. Probably, I do. Okay? If you are thinking about going out to eat this week, you have a choice. You might be rich. If when you go to the grocery store, you don't have to just buy the cheapest thing on the aisle, you might be rich by biblical standards. So people have a choice. People have a choice. Here's the reality for us. In our country, almost everyone is rich by biblical standards. It's not a bad thing to be rich. It's not a bad thing. In fact, you should feel better about yourself. Even if you're like in massive debt and you're upside down financially, you probably have Netflix. You should just raise your hand and be like, I'm rich. I don't have any money, but somehow I'm rich because I got choices. I got choices, right? So if somebody says, are you rich? You should just everyone's like, no, I'm not rich. You just flip the script. You're like, yeah, I am rich. I am. Like, really? Like, oh yeah, totally. Being rich. This isn't bad. Oh, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So, Paul has commands for us. Command those who are rich in this present world, those of us who attend Grace Bible Church, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth. Because if you love money, you will put your hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, isn't it? Isn't it uncertain? But to put their hope in God. Why should you put your hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment? Which is another way of saying every good and perfect gift comes from above. It's just another way of saying that. Don't put your hope in wealth, put your hope in God. Why in the world would we put our hope in something that is so uncertain? So what does he tell us to do? Verse 18. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds. So you should do good in your life. Do good. Be rich in good deeds. And to be what? Generous and willing to share. We should do good in our lives, and we should be generous with our money and our things and our possessions. Be generous with our money. And here's where we get stuck sometimes. So I'm going to make this verse really clear. Please, please, please. Please don't think that giving time is a replacement for giving money. Please. You're going to decide. I'm not going to decide what you do with your money. Of course I'm not. You are going to decide, and it's going to be between you and your family and God. And whatever you decide to do is what you decide to do. But please, 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 do not deceive yourself and say, I give time, not money. That's fine. You're just disobedient. And your faith is at risk. I just don't want you to be deceived, y'all. He's not playing here. He's not playing. Why? Verse 10. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people eager for money, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. If you're thinking to yourselves, didn't he already read that? Yes, I already read it. I just want you to believe it. I just want you to believe it. I'm not making this up. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So what was the answer? Back to verse 18. Command those to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. We've been saying this throughout the series. Gratitude-based generosity guards your faith. Gratitude-based generosity guards your faith. It guards your faith. There's no way around it. So I'm gonna tell you a little story, a conversation my wife and I had with each other just a couple of weeks ago. And I wasn't sure if I should share it or not because, it's not like a big deal, but I wasn't sure if I should share it or not because money is personal and we all have different amounts. But this is real, okay? It's just real talk, as one of my kids would say, real talk. So we're on a walk the other day, and we're talking about spring break. Our kid has spring break in a couple weeks. And we're on a walk, and it was a little bit cold, and we were saying, like, yeah, it'd be nice to go somewhere warm for spring break. And then we're talking about it. It'd be nice to go, yeah, wouldn't it be nice to go somewhere warm? Yeah. And then as we're talking about it, we just realized, like, yeah, we just don't have the finances for that right now. We got kids in college. We got other savings priorities. Like, it's just not going to happen, which is fine. We usually don't go anywhere for spring break. Most people don't go anywhere for spring break. That's not, like, a big deal. However, it did dawn on me that we could just, like, not give for like a month or two, and we could go somewhere warm. We could. I could just not give for a month or two. Take a pretty nice trip. I know people who've told me that's their plan. So why would I not do that? Well, one reason is that godliness with contentment is great gain. Another reason is that gratitude is a better way to live. But ultimately, my faith's not worth a trip to somewhere warm. And neither is yours. My faith's not worth driving something a little bit nicer. And neither is yours. Gratitude-based generosity, it guards your faith, but it requires you to have a giving plan. And I know that there are many of you here today, you have a giving plan. You are battling against loving money through your generosity and the way you've decided in advance to handle your money. But it would be unkind. It would be disingenuous for me as your pastor to say to you, money is dangerous to your faith without being really, really clear about how to avoid this danger. So if this feels, if what I'm about to say next, if this feels like remedial or if this feels like unnecessary to you, I want you to know it feels remedial and unnecessary to me as well. But I was given some counsel by people I respect, and they said, Eric, you just have to spell it out for people. So I'm gonna spell it out. I'm gonna spell it out for you, okay? If this is the application. The normal pattern of giving in the Bible is to the local church. That's just throughout the scriptures. It's just the normal pattern. I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why. 1, the local church is God's designed expression of his kingdom in the world. And if you're a Christian, the local church is how God works. 2, you can see the fruit of what God is giving in our church. And 3, you should attend a church you trust, and you should give to a place you trust. If the reason that you would say, oh, we can't give to Grace Bible Church, we can't support Grace Bible Church, is that you don't trust what God's doing here, I would encourage you to either ask the questions you need to ask to get the confidence you need to have, or sincerely attend a church you trust. Because we're taking care of your kids, we're going around the world making a difference, and we're serving all in the community. And if you don't trust the people sitting around you, by the way, the people sitting around you are the church. Man, let me encourage you. You should please attend a church you trust and support a church you trust. So how do we make this easy? On your way out today, you're gonna get a little handout. Oh, go back, please. You're gonna get a handout on the way back. It's right here. Boop, boop, sorry. You're gonna get, okay, the handout this isn't the handout. The handout is better than that. The handout has the verse on it. Okay, this isn't the handout. The handout has the verse on it, okay? You can't see that, but right here's the verse and the image. You're gonna get this on the way out, okay? You can keep this, you can remember. And then I'm gonna give you the most helpful, practical tool to guard your faith on the back. Here's the back of the handout you're gonna get on the way out today at all campuses. Now we can go to the next one. Okay, it's really simple. What do you make each month? And then there's a blank. It's a good, and if you don't know the answer to the question, you should know the answer to the question. What do you give each month? You should know the answer. What do you save each month? Now, when I think about this, I think about all the, insurances and retirement and long-term, all that sort of stuff. What do you save each month? What's left to live? You're like, Eric, this is just a remedial budget. I know it is. But if you don't know, you need to know. This is the number that will determine whether or not you're guarding your faith. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The normal pattern is that this number is 10% of that number. So if you make $10,000 a month, if you're like, hey, I look at my pay, I got $10,000 a month, then that number would be 1,000. I just chose that because, I can do the math on the fly. If it's 5,000, it would be 500. You want to see me do it with 3,000? You're going to have to come back at another service. I'm talking to those of you who are like, you're a part of our church. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that you can ignore what God has called you to financially and not be spiritually at risk. Don't do it. So what do you do next? And again, I was encouraged to make it really clear. Here's what you do. You begin giving, you automate your giving, and that's where you can do it. Like, I don't want to put the website up. People know. They're like, Eric, just it'll be helpful. Okay, there you go. What I want to say is, if the Spirit's moving you, you can figure it out. But anyway, all right, next slide. Being a decided giver. It frees us from deception, develops generosity, and generates gratitude in others. I had a closing email I wanted to read, and it's going to cost you some time in the parking lot, but I'm going to read it anyway. Traffic's going to be a little worse because I'm going long. But I got this email last Sunday afternoon, and when I got it, I just sat down on my couch and welled up in tears. I'm just going to read it, unedited. I'll leave it anonymous, but this is unedited. Eric, I'm fairly young in my journey with Christ. I started coming to church a little less than a year ago. Anyway, I wanted to reach out because during today's sermon, I realized something. If it was a few months ago, I would have been on the other side of that message, and I'm not sure how I would have taken it. That being said, I wanted to share my family's experience with you so that you could share it with anyone that might be on the fence or even opposed to it. Last year, we took Rooted, and there was a point where the subject of tithing and money came up. I was pretty cynical about it for any number of reasons, but basically, what's in it for me left my lips. It brings me a lot of shame now thinking about my reaction to that, to be honest. Anyway, my wife and I talked it through, and eventually we agreed to start giving. The number I agreed to was barely 1%. Again, shameful. Fast forward a couple of months. We're doing financial peace. We needed it. When we did the lesson on generosity, I felt something tugging at me. My wife and I ended up talking about it later that night for both of us. We just said, so tithing, which is giving your first 10%. We ended up talking about generosity for a couple of hours, and we had decided that at the beginning of the year, we would start giving for real. We made it a priority and said we needed to do it. Would it hurt? Probably a little. It's not an insignificant amount after all, but it's not ours anyway. We're just managing it, and we needed to manage it better. My fault. Since then, we have been blessed, not like a regular amount, but it just feels like things happen that shouldn't have any business happening. For example, we had an unexpected expense come up and literally received a check for a random refund that covered the amount needed. Totally unexpected, seemingly random. That's only one example, but literally stuff like this has happened so often in the last few months, it can't be a coincidence. God provides for us what we need when we need it. It's like spiritual just-in-time shipping. All that to say it's real. We're so grateful to be blessed the way we are, and it's hard for me to believe anything other than it's because we're following the scriptures. This is cliche, but my life has seriously changed from where I was a year ago. Our family wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for Christ, and I'm so grateful to my wife and Grace Bible Church for bringing me there. I hope you get 1 million emails just like this. Nobody who knows this person thinks that they're rich. This is not a rich person. But maybe he is. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we need all the grace in the world, all the grace you can give us to not be slaves to our money. It's a miracle every time our hearts are open to you. And we just pray now in Jesus' name that you would give every follower of Jesus in this room the grace to deal with this dangerous, dangerous part of life in a way that builds faith rather than wrecks it. Pray you'd help us to take action, Lord, in a way that honors you. In Jesus' name, amen.